Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amy Leese. I am a financial advisor, the owner of Juno Wealth Management, and the Grant Finance Chair for Impact 100. I'm going to start off with a story. But before I do that, I should also mention I am a pro-am ballroom dancer, which is why I'm super made up right now. I'm in the middle of a competition. So wish me luck. I'm ranked 6th in the country. So whoop, whoop. Anyway, I'm going to start off with a story. And it's a story that I've told before. So those of you that have heard it, just laugh along like it's your first time. There was this guy and his daughter, and he is sitting at a table with her, and she starts choking. She's choking really badly. And so he says, help, help, who can help me? Who can help me? And everybody's just kind of like, So finally a woman, walks over and is like, what's going on? And he says, well, I think she swallowed a quarter. And he's like, she swallowed a quarter? And he's like, yeah, please help her. So the woman's like, okay. So the woman gives the daughter the Heimlich, and out pops 2 dimes and a nickel. And so the guy is like, wow, thank you so much. Thank you. But I don't understand. I thought she swallowed a quarter and now I have 2 dimes and a nickel. And the woman says, well, I work for a nonprofit. We know how to save lives and make change. So that's about as funny as today is going to get. I am going to turn it over to the grants chair, the amazing, illustrious Irene Jaiman.
Hi, everybody. Irene Jaiman, Grant Review Chair. It's hard to tell a joke on Zoom. I just have to say that, Amy, I was laughing. Anyway, I'm also the tech host today. So I just wanted to kind of go over some housekeeping things. There's a large meeting. We're going to keep all participants muted. Okay. And when you have questions, we're going to stop for questions a couple of times during the presentation, as well as at the end, we'll take questions. And we're going to ask that you raise your hand. There's a lot of screens, so it's not necessarily like you could do it that way. It's more of finding the raise hand icon. Okay. And if you're on a desktop or laptop, you can go to the participant box on the bottom, go in there and you'll see an icon for raise hand. If you're on a tablet, I believe it's up on the top, the participant box, and the icon for raise hands in there. And if you're on a phone, there's 3 dots that you'll find at the top, and you click on the dots and then there's the raise hand. So any way you can get your hand raised, and then we will call on you and unmute you, when we're taking questions. So with that, I am going to turn it over to also the illustrious Kim Moon, who is chair of everything related to grants.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Amy. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. And for those of you who have sat through this before, thanks for coming back. We do have some new information, and we have, it's always helpful to go over the whole process just to get a feel for what you're getting into. Let me start by telling you a little bit about Impact 100 South Jersey, who we are. The collective grant making, giving circle model is very old. It's people coming together and taking what they have and pooling it to make a bigger difference in some philanthropic effort. And for us, we are local women. We're all from around here. And we just wanted to do this, and that's why we joined. And we are all volunteers, and so we're doing the best we can at all times. And we're in this together. We really want to learn about what it is you're doing in our community. We want to learn about ways that we can get more involved and support you. So we are basically wanting to be here and wanting you to succeed through this whole process. So just keep that in mind. So Impact 100 is not just a South Jersey organization. There are now 60 of them all around the world. There are several in Australia, one in New Zealand, one just started in London. So there are over 50 here in the United States, and there are 3 others in New Jersey, and there's one in Philadelphia, and the one in New York City is just launching. And so far, collectively, since we were founded, the original Impact 100, we have awarded over $80 million in grants. So it's a model that every impact does slightly differently. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about how we do it and how we work. All right. Every year we start from scratch. We go out and mostly word of mouth. We spread the word. We hold info sessions and we get women to join. And as a matter of fact, today is the last day of our current membership cycle. And however many members have joined as of today will be the amount of funding, will dictate the amount of funding that we have for our grant awards. We have 100 women, we will have enough for a $100,000 grant because each woman contributes $1,150. And the 150 is asterisk because that is extra money that we use for administrative costs, from software to the back office expenses for holding our account, and mostly just administrative related. Now, last year, we used some of that money to hold our annual meeting when we give away grants. But last year, since we did it virtually, we took the money we would have spent and gave it away as an extra grant. So we will announce, I believe it's January 6th. That will be our day of our big reveal. And that will be the day that we say how much we have for grants in the 2021 year. So what happens after that is you guys will have that. Okay. Meanwhile, the members themselves will be the ones who review the proposals and select the finalists. And then all the members who have joined Impact for this year will vote on the 3 finalists, one from each focus area, and the grant will be awarded to the finalist that gets the most votes. The first step, which is a step that you can do now and that Amy will explain in a little more detail, is the grant eligibility application review. That's the first step of the process. That's on our website now to fill out. And then comes the proposal review, which is by focus area. Each focus area has its own committee of members that will review their proposal. And then from there, the semifinalists, the proposals that have made it through that first round, will be asked if we can conduct site visits. Before Zoom, back in the pre-COVID days, we actually used to go to the nonprofit for a site visit. Last year, we started doing them virtually. It worked better than we thought it would, but we'll probably end up doing it again that way this year. Although when we're all going to pivot back the other way, it's who knows at this point. After the site visits, we then each focus area committee determines their finalist, one finalist, who then prepares a brief presentation. Last year, it was filmed and then sent to our entire membership that voted, and then we announced the grants at our annual meeting, which this year will be in June. The entire calendar of all these important dates are on our website. Next. Okay, these are the 4 applicant musts. You must be located in, as well as serve, Burlington, Camden, Cumberland, or Gloucester County. Located in means like you're based there. You are not based somewhere else and have an office here or want to expand your programming here. That might change at a later date, but for right now, we're really committed to funding organizations that are here, that are in the counties of Burlington, Camden, Cumberland, or Gloucester. We don't feel that there's a significant offers to these areas. Maybe some in Philadelphia that serve Camden, but we really want to be like homegrown funding. So that's why we insist for now that organizations be headquartered there. The second thing is you need to have a mission and or programs and service that focus on, and these are our 3 focus areas: education, women, children, and family, and new this year is community health and well-being. We changed our previous focus area of arts and culture to this. We felt that a wider range of organizations would be eligible to apply because it encompasses not just mental and physical health, and that could be mental and physical health of members of the community or community at large, but also basic needs, basic services. We didn't feel that was adequately covered in our previous focus area trio, so we are trying that out this year. Our third applicant must is your annual operating budget needs to be between 300,000 and below 5 million. Why do we insist on that? Well, it's a 2-year grant. It's $100,000 spread out over 2 years. And we want to make sure the organization is large enough to steward it properly, but we also don't want it to be such a big organization that our grant is going to not be noticed or be less than impactful. So we kind of have found that within that range, we have a lot of different organizations that fit that criteria and are able to successfully steward a $100,000 grant through. The fourth must, and Amy will talk about this more, is to have 3 full years of audited financial statements. And Amy will cover why that is, but I will say that our $100,000 grant awardee from last year, Lucy Outreach in Camden, came to us her first year and they didn't yet have that. And she held on until they got it and then finally could submit last year and ended up getting the grant. So that was very exciting for us because she came to our very first grant info session. And you're heartbroken that we couldn't see her through, but we really feel that this is important for good financial health for the organizations that we fund. Okay, a little more about our grant. Our $100,000 grant is for core mission. And what that means is we want our award to improve an organization's ability to deliver its services, which is really at the heart of what it does. And we want that to be able to basically take the mission to the next level. And okay, have it be a project of significance, not what you're currently doing, what you wish you could from where you are, but you didn't have a financial way you could see to get there, where you hope to be, and transformative and changing how you're currently able to do things in some meaningful way, meaningful to your organization. Examples of core mission grants, it could be capital improvements, fixing your space. We've had a couple of finalists and grantees who have been awarded a grant for that. Service expansion, expanding what you do to reach new area or a new community. Increasing organizational capacity. That could be software, feasibility study, new system for organizing volunteers, program development, a new way to achieve your mission. Specific examples from previous grant proposals. We've had an organization that wanted to carry out a program that needed a special technology platform that they couldn't afford. And they really felt they would be better able to serve the youth that their community, the population they serve. So that was something that they saw funding for. We've had a couple of organizations who were in buildings that were constructed so that they could only reach a limited number of people, and they found that if they just could fit out the space better or have an architect come in and redesign it, they could double the amount of clients served. We've had another organization who had so much demand and not enough volunteers, so they had to restructure their volunteer program so that the volunteers could actually train additional volunteers. So it was a way to just expand their whole volunteering program because they just didn't have enough staff to make it happen. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amy, but before I do, I just want to say, does anyone have any questions? We're about to get, Amy's going to get more into the financial review piece, but I just wanted to know if there was any questions about anything I'd said so far. And if so, you know, you can raise your hand and Irene will find you and you can ask your question.
Yes, we have Michael. Let me find Michael. Here we go. Mike, yeah, there you go.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I don't know if it's the right Michael.
Is it not the right Michael? I think there's two Michaels. Michael, did you raise your hand? Michael O'Malley, raise your hand? No?
No, but I'm happy to say hi.
How are you? Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to Michael Shaughnessy. Okay.
And if you think of a question after we keep going, you'll have another chance to ask it. And at the end, we'll also take more in-depth questions. So hold on to them.
Okay, Michael
Look up
Shaughnessy, you're unmuted.
Michael O'Malley, lovely name too. Hi, Michael. Okay. I just had a quick question about the when you said that the location and serve South Jersey, if in the three counties, what percentage of the activities should be of the services for the organization should be in South Jersey? So is there a threshold for if you serve beyond the area? Is that reduce your eligibility, or does that exclude you from eligibility? I was just wondering if you could address that part.
Okay, so we have had organizations who serve counties that they're based in one of our 4 counties, but they serve beyond those 4 counties.
Yes.
And the projects that they have come to us for are specifically taking place in the counties that we serve. So it's something, in one case, they've already done it in the other county and it's never really taken off in the county where we serve. So they're approaching us for funding to make that happen. And in another organization that was a finalist, they served another county, but they were piloting a new project and they were doing it within our area. So eventually, after our grant's over, they may move it into the other county, but for now, we're just funding the piece that's in our county.
Okay, that's clear then. The activities of the grant should be focused solely in one of the 3 eligible counties, correct?
4 counties, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Carlos Morales.
Okay. So am I okay? So can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay. Just a quick question. So in terms of the application, if we're working on something with other groups, can we mention them, or in other words, can we submit with other groups, or there has to be a lead applicant? It can't be multiple groups submitting for one effort.
It can. We do fund collaborative grants. However, one organization does have to be the lead. It has to be the fiscal group that's going to receive the grant. So yeah, you can collaborate with other groups. It just has to be with that one group that's going to apply.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Perkins Center. You can unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you. I noticed on the projects, the eligible projects, that there were capital projects. Are there any limitations on those in terms of, are they are there limitations on what can be invested in the facility or?
Are you asking, can the application be completely on a capital project?
Yes.
Yeah, it can. And it's not though a grant to help support a larger capital campaign.
Right.
But it's just to do something to your building or your site or to fix something or expand something. Yes, that can be the grant.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. We have one other question about the deadline being January 8th, 2021.
That's for the first round that Amy is now going to talk about a little more.
I will actually use that as a perfect segue, so thank you. So go back one slide, please.
Sorry.
It's okay. So first steps, when you get off this call, you're going to be so excited. You're going to be like, yay, we're going to do the application. It's going to be awesome. It is due January 8th, 2021. So good catch on the typo. January 8th, 2021 at 5 p.m. And when I say 5 p.m., what I really mean is 5 p.m. We're pretty hard and fast on deadlines. So let's talk a little bit about the grant eligibility review, why we do it. In our first year, we did a grant eligibility at the same time. We did a financial review at the same time as just a regular grant review. It didn't work out very well because what we discovered is that some of the organizations that we loved their projects, unfortunately, didn't have the financial health to be able to support the grant from Impact. And so what we have learned instead is that we need in the very, very beginning to kind of separate out the organizations that are financially healthy and the ones that need a little bit of work. Like I said, I'm a financial advisor. My committee is made up of financial advisors, bookkeepers, CPAs, executive directors of nonprofits. So we're familiar with this process of what we look at. In terms of the eligibility review, we see ourselves in my committee, and pretty much I can tell you it goes across all of the committees, the grant review committee, everybody in Impact 100. We see ourselves as fiduciaries. We see ourselves as shepherds of the money of our members, right? So we have 100+ women who are entrusting us to make good decisions with their $1,000. And so we take it really, really seriously. I can tell you in the past, and not everybody makes it through. I would have to say our first year, maybe 30–40%. This past year, probably closer to about 50–60% made it through. So it's good. That tells me that the numbers in South Jersey are getting better and that the organizations are getting financially stronger. But not everybody makes it through that first hurdle. Go ahead, next slide, please. So let's talk about some of the things that we look for. One is the overall financial health of the organization, right? So is your organization, are you sitting on a lot of debt or not? Can you pay off the debt, right? So if you think about how you personally, right? How if somebody was looking at their own finances or you were going to apply, let's say for a mortgage, right? They're going to do a credit check. They're going to look and see if you have good enough assets. They're going to say like, okay, do you have enough cash in case you lose your job? Can you still afford the mortgage? So it's the same concept, except applied to an organization. So we want to know if, gosh forbid, one of your major funders changes, can you still survive? Uh-oh. I don't know how to turn that off. It's not my phone. I would still. I just hung up on them. Okay, I'm in somebody else's office. This is so fun. Okay, Zoom is awesome. Okay, so we're really looking for overall financial health of the organization, and we want to make sure that you have enough if you lose a major founder, that you have enough to be able to pay off all of the debts. The other thing we look at is trend lines. So, and I cannot stress this enough. We look at trends. That's one of the reasons why we're asking for 3 years. I know it is a lot to ask of you to have 3 years of audits, 3 years of 990s. I get it. But we keep looking at trends because we want to see financially, are your assets growing? Is this an organization that maybe the revenue is growing, the income is growing, or are your debts growing, right? So we want to see over time, what does that look like? Or is it just totally stable and that's okay too? We're really lifting up the hood and looking at the inner workings. We've seen organizations that are literally taking money from one founder just to pay off the debts over on the other side. And so it's one of the reasons why we take this so seriously. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here are some of the things that we look at. And for those of you that this is your first year and your first time looking at this, I cannot stress enough, these are numbers that you can sit down and really run yourselves. This is all based off of balance sheets, 990s, audits. It is very eye-opening for organizations to go through this process. I really recommend running it yourself and presenting it to your boards, because a lot of boards aren't aware of kind of the financial inner workings. You know, you get the treasurer's report, you kind of see what's coming in and out, but this is a little bit deeper dive into some of your numbers. So one of the things that we look for is a current ratio, and you can see what our minimum is. So if you are going to make it past this financial eligibility review, you have to at least hit the minimums on here. And then you can see over in the third column, this is what I call a 2020 grant year averaged, right? So even though it says 2020, it may include data from all the way from 2016 through 2019 and give or take, because we understand that some organizations, your fiscal year might be July, it might not be a calendar year. And that's okay. We're willing to work around that as long as it's 3 recent years. It has to be 3 recent consecutive years. Okay, so you can kind of see what our participants averaged, those who kind of, this is what we're looking for in terms of numbers. There's the minimum and then there's averaged. So current ratio, we're looking at, can you, with your short term, whatever you have in terms of like cash, inventory, do you have enough there in a short term to also pay off your short-term debts and payments and money owed and all of that stuff? Increase in net assets, that's kind of a self-explanatory, right? So this is especially where we are looking at trends. We want to see, is this organization, are the assets growing, staying stable, or declining? Equity ratio. So we're looking here to see, does your company hold more debt or does your company hold more assets and equity? And by company, I mean organization, sorry. In sometimes, you know, when you're looking at the equity ratio, it's over a longer term. It's not short-term obligations, right? So short-term is usually a year or less. This is a longer-term picture. And what we're wondering is, can your organization pay back money that it owes? Debt ratio, you can see on debt ratio and also operating margin, we're looking at unrestricted assets. The reason we look at unrestricted is same thing, right? We want to know, do you have enough money unrestricted that you can pay off debts, that you can fulfill obligations, that you can support the organization to continue? Any money that is restricted that cannot be used to support the everyday of the organization, we don't necessarily take that into consideration as strongly, because once again, if one of your major funders decides it's just not your year, you need to have enough that's not already tied up elsewhere to be able to use. And then the final one is the unrestricted surplus to deficit ratio. So we want to know, in general, did your organization bring in more than it owed? Was it flat? You know, what happens? Can you fund your other expenses if there's no other revenue available? Same thing here, we're looking at trends. A tip that I can give you, not just financially, but especially when you get to the grant application, we look at trends because we believe in sustainability and we want to be able to see that this is an organization that's going to continue. When you fill out your applications for the actual grant, I stress to everybody, make sure you're focused on demonstrating sustainability, right? So what's going to happen once the Impact 100 grant runs out? How are you going to continue funding that program? Are you creating a program that's then going to fund itself? Are you, whatever it is, it's in your best interest to really show how these programs are going to be able to continue. We had a question come in. Are we looking at 3-year averages or actual numbers? So that's a really good question. The answer is actual numbers. So we will look at, and I'm going to come back to this. We look at actual numbers, right? So I'm going to say, how did you do in 2016? How did you do in 2017? And I'm going to see if that trend is going up or down. With that said, I know that this year has been incredibly difficult for people, for organizations. Like, we are all getting through 2020 right now. And we are going to take that into consideration with the eligibility application. Once everything comes in, this might be the year that my committee says we're going to look at averages, just because with the COVID numbers, they are so significantly different. It's not fair to the organization. So we might have to wind up looking at averages instead. We're going to know that more once we get all the information in. You know, the other piece of it that we're doing this year is at the end of the eligibility application, there's going to be a question. Is there anything else going on? Is there anything that happened financially that we should know about? If you're running these numbers yourself, if you suspect that there might be something off a little bit, if you had a really tough 2020, COVID really hit your organization hard, for whatever reason, right? Maybe you had a change of executive directors, and so your organization was just kind of stable for a while, but not really growing like it should. It could be any number of things. That would be the part where you can really note it and really explain the situation and help us better understand, because we only see numbers. We don't know your story. We don't know what kind of grant you're necessarily going to apply for. We're really looking at numbers. So help provide us with that color commentary. Help us see, if we need to, what the bigger picture is and why your numbers look a certain way. Next slide. Okay. Before I turn it over to Kim, does anyone have any questions?
Yes, we have a question from Perkins Center, so you can unmute yourself.
That's okay. I think you just unmuted me and Amy answered the question for me. Thank you.
We also had another question in chat regarding art not-for-profits, whether they should apply.
So I can answer that. I'm a huge fan of the arts. I used to sit on the board of Perkins. Shout out to the arts. So the answer is yes, arts organizations should definitely apply. One of the reasons we changed the focus areas this year was to make it more inclusive for everyone. Arts organizations can apply under any one of those 3 focus areas, assuming your project or your proposal meets, let's just say, like the definition, or it falls under that area, right? So let's say you're an arts organization that wants to start a program that's going to help bring the arts into schools and work with teachers, right? So maybe for that, I would apply under education or something like that. So there are different ways to do it. You just have to figure out where what you're doing fits. But yes, I'm not allowed to say I'm biased, but I love the arts and everybody else. But yes, arts organizations, please, please apply. Okay, other questions?
I think that's it for now. We can get into Kim's section and then take questions at the end.
Oh, wait, I thought of one more thing, sorry. Another thing, just because I mentioned being biased or not, when we review these, it's not necessarily me looking at this and making a decision. We actually have 2 or 3 or 4 different people all rating your organization at the same time. And they're doing it blind, so they don't know what each other's doing in terms of ratings. So we've been really working on inter-rater reliability, and I have to say, they are pretty spot on and they match all of the way down. So gosh forbid you're one of the organizations that didn't necessarily make it through. It's not you. It is not personal. It's not because we don't love you. We love nonprofits in South Jersey. We're fully supportive of nonprofits in South Jersey. It just means that you need to get your finances in better shape, that a whole committee actually agreed upon that. And it doesn't mean that you can't come back and apply the next year. We've had organizations that, really worked their butt off and changed their numbers and came back a year or 2 years later and they made it through. So just keep that in mind, and you guys go get them. You can do it. Okay, Kim. Oops.
Thanks, Amy. I just wanted to add a couple of things about can arts organizations apply? And yes, Amy's not the only one who's a fan of the arts. My husband's a musician, and he's dying right now during these COVID times because he can't play out anywhere. But also, we felt that when I said before, when I was describing community health and well-being, I feel the arts are vital to a healthy community. And I feel that there are a lot of other organizations whose missions are vital to communities and the health and well-being, mental health especially. So it doesn't have to exactly say arts and culture or animal welfare or environment or whatever your organization is, if you can make that case. So just please keep that in mind, because we feel that community health and well-being has a broad swath. Plus, as I said before, also, we wanted a place for basic services of, food security, homelessness. It wasn't really being addressed before in our focus areas. So we really wanted to make that part of what we fund as well. So now I'm going to take you from when you have submitted your grant eligibility application. The Finance Review Committee has reviewed it, and we let you know if you've made it through. Now, another change we've made over the 4 years that we've been in operation is that we would have organizations submit their financials and submit the proposal. And then the proposal was never really reviewed if the financials didn't measure up. And we thought that was putting a lot of unnecessary work on the nonprofit, because their project proposal didn't necessarily see the light of day because of the finances. So now what we do is you can just apply and get through, and then you can figure out your project. You have, I think this year, 6 weeks and 3 days from when we tell you that your finances were approved to when you submit the proposal. So you can have an idea, but you don't have to flesh it all out just to make it through the first round. And I think that's important for you guys to know, because you're already doing so much, and it's one less thing on your plate until you move forward. So yeah, we will let you know on February 3rd. You're submitting January 8th. We're going to let you know on February 3rd if your finances were reviewed successfully by the committee. And then we're going to invite you to submit the project proposal. You'll get a link to the application. Okay. Now we're in the grant review committee. Each focus area has its own grant review committee, and every year it's different members, because we have some members who do it every year. We have new members. So what one committee decides about your project one year could be completely different than if you applied again the following year. So just please keep that in mind. It's a changing group of women. And they have all different backgrounds. They are all trained to go through proposals and understand what it is they're looking for and what they're looking at. So the things that have come to light that have made proposals succeed, we have found: first, attention to detail. Clearly answer every question. You don't need a grant writer. Lots of small organizations don't have grant writers on staff, and we know that. It doesn't have to be professionally written. It just needs to answer clearly the questions we're asking. And we find it really helpful when the project budget matches the project activities. So if you're describing something in the proposal, just make it a line item in the project budget, or vice versa, and just make it specific like what the costs are. Um, it's just easier that we don't have to figure this out ourselves and we'll really know where the money is going. And also the timetable of our grant is July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2023. That means the money that you're going to be awarded has to be spent within that time period. And if you have a very large project that the first phase is already happened and it's a massive budget, more than ours, and you're just looking for us to fund a piece of it, which is fine, just make that clear, and there'll be space on the proposal for that. It can't have already, the money can't be spent before you get it, is what I'm saying. Next slide. We also look for organizational strength, and we start with best practices and governance, which kind of just goes back to your board. The strength of your board, the makeup of your board. We feel that just shows a healthy organization if you've got board terms, if you've got an involved board, if you have a board that financially supports the organization. And I know that a lot of organizations have board members from the community that they serve. And they have board members that are not necessarily brought there to be donors, but financial support can be whatever is meaningful to the person. If it's $5, and that's big, that's financial support. So please keep that in mind. And strategic planning, because this is a large grant and it usually is playing out in some version of a vision of your organization. We found that it was kind of important that an organization have some kind of strategic plan in place and in play, just because it's just the steps broken out of what you're trying to achieve, and hopefully we can play a part in getting you there. And the third thing is that the project has specific outcomes. What are you looking to happen? And we know that things happen and the project doesn't always go as planned, and you don't meet those goals, but and there's a story that can be told about why that happened, and that's fine, because just because we give you the money doesn't mean we know that it's going to be a success. It's just what it is, and we'll work with you on that. We do want it to be sustainable. We don't want it to go away after our grant runs out. And we want you to be able to kind of say, how will this be sustained after our grant runs out? And timely. Why does this project need to happen now? Like, why is the timing of this so critical? That's really helpful for us to know in the proposal. And okay, so the committee members receive your proposals, they read them independently, then they meet, then they determine which of that group of proposals that apply to that focus area that year should be moved forward, the ones that they can see being a finalist for the grant, and they make those organizations the semi-finalists. And those are the ones to whom we make site visits, which we'll again do virtually. And it's just so we get a better feel for the organization, for the project, what the project's going to look like in the organization, maybe answer some questions that weren't exactly clear in the proposal. That happens a lot. Like, we can't envision exactly what they're describing, and then we get there and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, it makes total sense. The site visits are really crucial, and even though they've happened virtually, they've really worked well. So that's what is the next round. And then the committee members, who, not all the committee members can always attend all the site visits, but those that do report back to the whole committee about their experience. They have a discussion. It's very democratic. And then from there, they choose the finalists. Each focus area selects one finalist, and we will announce those finalists on May 28th. And each of the finalists has to do a brief presentation for all the members. And pre-COVID times, that was at our annual meeting in front of our membership. It was a timed presentation of 10 minutes. And then the membership voted right there. Last year, we had them do film presentations, and then the members viewed them and then voted, and then we announced them. So that's the basic scenario for how our process works. Now, let's say you are the organization that was awarded the $100,000 grant. How does that work? We meet with you and we work with you on what works for you about when you get the money. We have it in hand because members gave it to us. So if it's a project that needs the money up front, we can work with that. If we want it to tie in your fiscal year, we can work with that. If you want it quarterly, we can work with that. It's just what is the most effective way for you to be awarded the money for your project and your organization. And we figure out a timetable together and we do a grant agreement, and then we can tweak it. We tweaked it when COVID happened. We awarded, we moved timetables around. We can be flexible, but we just want to sit down and kind of work it out with you in the beginning and figure out if it's going to be the whole 2 years or just 1 year or what. And we ask for some reporting as we go along, and then a final report as to the project's, success, what didn't work, what happens now, just to keep that, give that to our members. And so after that, you have a year and then you can reapply again. If you are a finalist that does not get the $100,000 grant award, you can apply again next year. And with that, I am going to ask one of our grantees from last year, who was a finalist in our women, children, and family focus area and received not the $100,000 grant, but a general operating grant, Rosemarie Parker with Family Promise of Southwest New Jersey, to talk a little about the process so you can hear it from your side and not just from us. Irene, can you find Rosemarie?
I'm here.
I see her.
See me? Okay, so thank you for having me to talk about my experience with the Impact 100 grant. It was very exciting. And it did start actually 3 years ago when I attended a similar session to what they're hosting today. I went in with, grand hopes of being able to submit for this application, but found out very quickly that I was missing some of the musts, including the 3-year audit. My budget wasn't quite where they needed to be. My project, wasn't quite as specific as they would like to have seen it. So I was slightly discouraged, but also encouraged because they have provided you all today with so much information on how to make your project successful and how for it to really get through to become a finalist. They laid it all out for you. It's very clear what they're looking for. So I took this information back to my board and said, look, we need our audit. We need to make sure our financials are clear. We can certainly, be in the running for this type of a grant. And we spent that time, making it happen. We worked hard over the next 2 years to make sure we checked every box and that our application, once submitted, would be taken seriously. So I was very excited when it did. The application process, everything that you are going to experience along the way is very clear cut. It's very to the point of what they're looking for. And, the whole process to me was very encouraging. Any question that I had along the way about should I apply during my application process, my questions got answered. I was not ignored. And having to do my presentation virtually when that was all quite a new experience. They made it very accommodating. They made me feel relaxed in doing the presentation. And we made it to be the finalists. So we didn't get the full $100,000 award. We did, we were a runner-up. So that was also very exciting. And the experience to me was very rewarding. So I would like to encourage any nonprofit, if maybe you heard something during this presentation where you felt, you know, I don't have one of the musts, or my financials aren't where they need to be. I don't have an audit. My board might not be, you know, as involved as they should be. You have time. So if this may not be the year for you to apply, don't give up. Spend the time to make it happen. This group isn't going anywhere. They're doing amazing, incredible work in the community. So maybe this isn't your year, but maybe next year will be, or the year after that. It was 3 years for me before I actually applied from attending my first initial seminar. So I'm available if anyone has questions for me as well, even after the call. It's Rosemarie Parker with Family Promise of Southwest New Jersey. And I encourage you all to submit your applications.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Rosemarie.
you. That was so nice. That was great. Yeah, I have to say, I said in the beginning, we want so badly for you to succeed. People reviewing your proposals, they get very invested, and we get very excited when organizations that don't make it through at any part reapply the next year. We actually like keep our eye out for them. So that was a great story. And yes, we've had many people who have not made it through come back, and they've made it through. And I'm also a member of Impact 100 Philadelphia, and I saw that happen over there. And I remembered years later, like great site visits I'd done, and the organization had made it through, and then they come back, they apply, they get the $100,000, and it's been great. So anyway, I'm going to turn it back to Irene.
Yes, we're going to open it up for questions. Before we do, I want to make a couple of announcements. One is that this PowerPoint will be available on our website. So if you want to review, you know, everything, and if we're really technologically advanced, a recording of this meeting will be on the website, but we'll see about that. There's a couple of questions in the chat that I thought I would we'd answer, and then if people would like to raise their hands again. The first question was, are smaller grants awarded to the other focus area finalists? Kim, did you want to?
Sure. Okay, so last year, we had 186 members. So we had $186,000 to award, and we did one $100,000 award, and then we divided the 86,000 into two $43,000 grants, and those were given to the finalists, the other two finalists. And that money is, we call it a general operating support grant. That is when it's general operating support, because if you've conceived of a project that's such a significant amount of money and you only get 43,000, we're not going to make you do the project for 43,000. You can apply it towards your project if you want, or you could do whatever your organization needs to have done at that time. And we'll just check in with you a year later to just see what happened, and so we can tell the membership. But that's what the other two finalists got. Our first year, we didn't have enough money to give to the other finalists, and I think everyone's still scarred from that.
Yes.
It was hard. It was very hard.
I can't even. We have another question. Are matching funds required?
No.
And
No, the answer is no.
Yeah. Okay. Another question. For the January 8th financial eligibility submission, I understand we do not need to flesh out the project. My question is, when we submit, will we need to identify the name of the project? Assuming the answer is yes, will we need to have a short description? And I can take that. No. In fact, not only needn't you identify the project or describe it, but at that point, you don't need to specify which focus area you're applying to. So it really is just a general application on your finances without anything further than that.
Yeah, I can kind of piggyback on that really fast. I can tell you, once we get your information, we're looking at numbers, period, except unless you fill out the question, like what else is going on. But for the most part, we don't know what projects you're going to be doing. we don't necessarily we don't even look at your project budgets, right? So that's a grant review piece of it. We're really focused 100% on the overall financial health of your organization.
We have another question that I'll probably throw over to Kim. I understand that faith-based organizations can apply, but funding cannot go to projects or activities that include a religious element. Would you be able to say more on this about how you are thinking about it?
Actually, Kim, before you do that, can I just interject? We've kind of wrapped up a lot of the general piece of this presentation. So we're just going to hang out here and take questions that sound, the ones that I'm reading that are coming in are pretty specific to organizations. So if you want to hang out with us, we will stay and answer your questions. But otherwise, we're not going to really talk any more generally about the grant process. Sorry, Kim, go ahead.
No, that was fine. Thank you, Amy, for saying that. Yeah, when we did these live, we'd finish the session and then we would talk to people individually. And that's kind of the part we're at right now. So feel free to stick around if you want to hear what other questions are, if you have one of your own. Yes, so we have, we changed the language in our eligibility around faith-based organizations because we wanted to be able to fund projects that were happening from faith-based organizations that did not have a religious component. And because we feel like there were a lot of those that we were overlooking because of our previous language. So we changed it to read that we would look at those projects as long as the participants in the project didn't have to actively participate in the faith of the faith-based organization. So that's, I'm kind of doing it off the top of my head. I'm not reading it off our grant eligibility and guidelines, but they're on our website. And again, like I told you, with every grant review committee, it really is determined by that group how they perceive that. So it's kind of like wide open language. And we'll see what happens because we do want other organizations to apply that may not have been able to apply before. And I'm sorry, the room got very dark. I moved into a new room, my daughter's bedroom. Obviously this is not working, but I'm really sorry that I'm in the dark over here, but we all know how this goes with Zoom.
Amy, do you want to take the next question? Do you have your chat open on?
Sure. So the question is about if your working capital is limited, can you still apply? So the answer is yes. I would include this in the what else should we know and kind of spell it out a little bit better question at the end. Additionally, if you are part of a much larger organization, we are going to probably dig deeper into your numbers. So don't just submit. So we had, for example, something that was part of a bigger hospital, but it was a nonprofit in and of themselves. And we really want to see your numbers, not the larger organization in terms of what the hospital or what the state is telling you to do, things like that. Other questions?
Do you guys all remember how to raise your hands? Going into the participant box, looking for the raise hand icon. What I'll do at this point, just to make sure, if you, oh, here's one. Okay, Lindsay Markeltz, here you go. You can unmute yourself.
Thanks. So I was kind of doing a manual hand raise. I forgot how to use that function. So thank you. So follow up to the faith-based question, if you don't mind, because I see that language a lot and it's, you know, like it means one thing here and another somewhere else. So what's important to you, based on what I heard you say, is that participants are not required to engage in the faith elements, as opposed to there not being any faith element in the project. So if there was an activity that opened with prayer, can that activity be funded as long as participants aren't made to participate in prayer, or you would want to stay away from that activity?
Amy?
I was looking at you, Kim. I mean, we've
If
had
the
this conversation.
participants are not, oh, now we both answered. If the participants are not required to participate,
I think we'd have to look more closely at it. I would be reluctant to give an answer right now based on that. We'd have to look at the scope of the whole project and what it's about and what's involved in the whole project.
And I think the bigger piece here is that, remember, you're coming up against a lot of other organizations that are not requiring something like that at the beginning of a program. So I would think about what project you're really going to put forward and do it in a way that, you know, if you're competing against others, that when it gets to that committee table, that it will be widely accepted and approved at that committee table. You don't want people to really, you want people to fight for you and go to bat over your project. You don't want people fighting over whether or not like they should fund you at all. Do you know what I mean? Like, so just choose wisely in terms of the project that you decide on.
Great, thank you. And that's really what we were trying to, like, which lens should we put on and how should we prioritize? And so that's really helpful. Thank you.
Other questions?
You now have the ability to unmute yourself if you couldn't find your raise hand icon. So you can give that a try. We're a smaller group now.
Thank you so much for all this information. I have another appointment, so I'm heading out, but thank you so much.
hey, thank you for coming.
Sounds like no one else has questions.
No more questions?
Well, thank you all for being here.
Yeah, and if you think of anything else as you're going through the process, you know, you can reach out to us. That's fine. We'll do our best to answer your questions if it's about the grant process in particular.
Yep. And so
Okay.
good luck, everyone.
Good
Yes.
luck, everyone. Rosemary, thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Rosemary. Thank you for being
Here.
here.
Good to see you guys. Amy, good luck on your dancing.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.